I feel a bit cursed actually because I sat next to Roy last night at dinner, and at one point he said to me he'd spent his whole career following me around clearing up after my derailments. I thought if that's what I'm going to be remembered for after nearly 38 years on the railway, I better stay a few years more and try and turn it around a bit. So it's very nice to be back, and I'll explain it as we go along that I've been out of heavy rail, because this isn't a Network Rail event, is it? No, I've come to work for Network Rail, but I've been out of heavy rail for 10 years. I'll explain why. And I missed it really, and I've come back. I'm very pleased to be back. But I learned something by being away, so I'd like to tell you a little bit about that, and then say something about what we're going to do going forward. So, Manchester Metrolink. Well, we're in Manchester. In 2004, when they took maintenance, when Network Rail took maintenance back in house, I stayed with Serco because they said to me, "Why don't you stay and do something different?" Which I did, and they sent me to be a managing director of Manchester Metrolink, which I hope nobody will be offended if I say was the best job I ever have had. Still, it was a fantastic job, but it was quite a shock to me because I thought it was a railway, but when I went there, I realised light rail is very different from heavy rail. So one of the issues about light rail, which I realised very quickly, is you have problems with the street. They call it problems with the street. And so I just put a few slides in to illustrate why that's the case. And that's St. Peter's Square, looking inbound, they call it. Some of you will know that, won't you? You'll know more about Manchester Metrolink than I do, I should imagine. So they call it inbound. And the problem is, because the very reason for having a tramway is that you can run it through the towns where there's people. You want to run it with people, but you can imagine me being a heavy railman, when I looked at this as is Market Street near the Arndale Centre, well, I sort of got used to the way things ran on the Metrolink. Oh, sorry. It scared me a bit, because that's exactly the opposite of what we want in heavy rail, isn't it? That's not the situation we like. In fact, when we talk about separating people from trains, we mean our staff usually, and our workforce. We don't mean the general public. And that's on, I think that was in June actually, in 2006, I think. Yeah. But that's just a normal day on the Metrolink, and since I've left, the system's been expanded. They've done a tremendous, TFGM have done a tremendous job with it, and it's gone to the airport, it's gone to Rochdale, it's gone to, what's the place out to East Didsbury, I can't remember. Ashton-under-Lyne, thank you very much. Yeah, see, some people know. So it's, and I think they've built it up to be in my opinion, it's certainly the best light rail system in Britain. There might be a few people who argue with that. And I still don't know whether you call London Underground, I think it's a metro, isn't it? Steve, I guess it is. Yeah. I'd call it a metro, yeah. So that's a good system, of course. So, some things about light rail. Well, they prefer, wherever possible, to have line of sight. They don't like signalling, driving by line of sight. So you can imagine being a railway engineer, I found that a bit scary at first, but and when I was there, what they had was a mixture of a bit of line of sight and a bit of what I would call railway signalling, which I think they've still got now, although it's a bit more advanced than it was. So line of sight driving. Drivers had a horn which they used to use a lot. I don't know if they use it quite so much anymore, but they used to use the horn a lot, and had a rail horn and what we call it, a town horn, a service horn. They weren't supposed to use the rail horn in the town, but they invariably did, otherwise people wouldn't get out of the way. So I learned something about being a light rail. I enjoyed it because I was the managing director. I was doing a lot of operating the system rather than being the engineer. I had an engineering director, but probably the thing I learned more than I'd seen before was the way that Serco ran their companies, was that each contract ran like a separate business. So I had a P&L, profit and loss account, and I was responsible for the delivery of the profitability of the business. And that focuses your mind in a way that I've never had before, not even when I was in GTRM and Carillion. Certainly don't think I'd seen it in my career at that point, but I found that very interesting. Light rail as well, when I first went there, they were very nervous of me because what they said to me early on was, we don't want you bringing your heavy rail, expensive mentality into light rail. I was a bit offended, but I got used to it in the end. So, and I think they learnt a bit from me and I learnt a bit from them, and it was a great job. So, I thought I'd step back even beyond that to just around the time of privatisation, because I've been speaking on the track maintenance engineers course and to young track engineers, often graduates but not always, for, I don't know, 25 years, I think, maybe a bit more. And I thought I'd just show you, I've got 3 slides that shows you what I was telling them at the time. They're a bit bullet pointy, but never mind. So I just, this is what I was saying to them in 1996, and I thought I'd put that up and we'd probably come back to it during the day and see if you thought I was right. So I haven't changed the words, so if they seem a bit odd, it's because I've just used what it said then. So I was telling them we're going to have higher speeds, increased tonnage, we'd have to have better reliability, because that's one of the reasons they privatised the railway, to get better reliability. And we'd have to have improved availability. What we meant by that was it's what you would call, I suppose, track access now. Because we came from, a lot of my friends are in the audience, we came from a system where if you had the rules of the route and you had white periods, and if you wanted to use any of those things to go and do work in as an engineer, you could. And it changed, and it's certainly changed now, where all those things aren't automatically a right for engineers to work in. In fact, it's gone the other way, really. Those things have been filled up with trains, with freight traffic and with passenger traffic, which I think is a good thing. But I sort of saw that coming, and that's what I meant by improved availability, because it was starting to be the way it was going even then. And I said probably higher axle loads. Well, I'm probably wrong there. I don't know if that's materialised or not. Some of you will tell me, but I don't see that as an issue now. So, these pictures and comments are things, they're not part of the original slide, but I was going to have some slides about some of the good things that are going on, and then I thought, well, that's not really sensible, because there's people on the agenda who are going to do that later. And also, I couldn't put enough of the detail into a presentation in half an hour that would really explain it, so I thought I'd just add a few tasters in for you. So, at the time, the technical issues, are we living on borrowed time? I got that from someone, I can't remember who, might have been Peter Rayner or someone like that. But it was all around broken rails. We're going to look at broken rails in a minute. Because I've been away for 10 years and I've come back, and one of the things that my boss said to me on the first day is, find out why things improved so much while you've been away. He suggested I ask Brian Whitney, and those of you who know Brian Whitney will understand why after 6 months I'm just about starting to understand some of it, because Brian knows a lot. So at the time it was certainly about broken rails was the key issue. Assessing risk, well, it feels to me as the whole industry now, we are much better at managing risk and understanding the risk of change and the risk of engineering activities than we ever were when I was young, when I was at PWME. I don't think we were nearly as on top of it as we are now. I've got some illustrations a bit later on, but I'll put in there about risk-based maintenance and business critical rules. I don't want to give a lecture on what business critical rules is. Certainly I haven't got the time. But they're both things that have captured my imagination. Because in risk-based maintenance, it's the first time I've sat down and seen where I've been to meetings where we said we've analysed all the failures on a section of line, and we've made a conscious decision to take out BVI, basic visual inspection, patrolling as I would have known it, which is a complete new world to me. I wouldn't have imagined doing that when I was at PWME. But we've talked about so taking out BVI and replacing it with something that's a better control. So plain line pattern recognition, but not that alone, replacing it with that and replacing it with themed inspections of the things that need to be inspected. And it's in my opinion, it's a much better approach to go straight to mend the problem rather than walk up and down trying to find it. There's different views in the industry on how much use patrolling and BVI is, and I don't think that PLPR is taking away the need for skilled railway people. That would be madness. We need them more than we ever have, I think. But it's taking people out of harm's way, and it's replacing them with something that actually is a much better measurement than we ever got from just patrolling. So, links into separating people from trains. We're starting to think about it then. We've got the opposite debate going on at the moment, where the access to the track is so difficult, and some engineers think we need to be asking for more access and fighting our corner, and some people think actually we need to be finding ways to do it without accessing the track. The camp I'm in is wherever possible we should be doing inspection without accessing the track, and it's not easy. We shouldn't be sending people on the track just to look at things and walk and measure things, but we should be sending people on the track to do preventative repairs and mend things. So we'll see where we get to with that. Possession management, at the time we used to take one possession for 1 or 2 jobs, and it was okay, but now every possession's got 10, 15, 20 jobs in. I think we've improved a lot, but it's created a lot of problems. You know, I don't think possession management today is any easier than it was when I did it, and in some ways it's more challenging. And then I was nervous about leaving in shadow of litigation, but that's what I used to talk to them about. And I didn't talk to them, I wasn't trying to scare them, I was trying to explain to them what they could do to actually protect themselves and to make sure that they stayed on the right side of the line. And I don't think we should be frightened about having that sort of discussion with engineers today, because it's important that you feel comfortable. And I've certainly been, you know, we're always joking about the derailments that I used to have. Well, I've had a few, but I don't want young engineers having derailments like we did. We should have moved away from that sort of world by now. So, I put the tubular stretcher bar on there, there's a picture of it, there's one outside, there's people around who know a lot about it. It's a really imaginative initiative. It's fantastic. And I think what we replaced, the old stretcher bars, the flat bar stretcher bars, and later on the adjustable stretcher bars that we replaced with that, it's a different level of engineering altogether. I mean, are you talking about it, Ian?
I'm not touching it.
Oh, well, okay. Well, outside there's a tubular stretcher bar up there, and lots of people know all about it, so you can go and have a look in the breaks. I was always also talking to them about technical competence. It's really important, isn't it? It's always been important to me. We have technical engineers who feel competent. So, you know, competence brings you confidence and means you make the right decisions when you're faced with the need to make a right decision. So I was a bit worried that I said it will be assumed to be there. I think that's the way it's gone, actually. I think because our TMEs work as part of operations, it's more important than ever that they can stand and say, I have to do this because that's what the standard says and I'm doing it for this reason, and they hold the line on it. And I think it's not an easy, we don't always put them in an easy position. So we'll talk about some of the new ways of doing things during the day. Renewals, I could see there as the railway was dividing into renewals and maintenance companies. I felt it was more important than ever that we had proper renewals proposals, a proper renewals proposal system, what you now call a problem statement. I felt we needed to be on top of that. Still wrestling with it today, I think. Certainly now we're going into a strategy of doing more refurbishment. To do refurbishment properly, you need to go and specify what you want and make sure you're solving the problem that's there. So, line standards are in place, work to them. Well, in my job, I don't have any direct people who work for me, but in my job I sign off the whole of the framework that we use in the industry, and I don't mean network rail, I mean we use in the industry. I sign the framework for all of that, and I feel that if you think that isn't working, you need to tell me. There are some things about it I think are very good, and some things aren't so good. And so one of the things I think is very good is SO53. Most people know what SO53 is, won't they? See if we get any nods. Yeah, most of you. I'll say something about it in a minute. So. Well, I'll say something now. So SO53, I thought it came in 2008 first. Bob Maskin, is Bob Maskin here? When did it come in, Bob? Some people said it came in 1998. Yeah, 96. Okay. All the early versions I've seen have mainly got your name on them, and the briefing thing. But I think it's a tremendous document, and even now we're struggling to go out and explain it to people and get it so everyone understands it and they understand the hazards described in it. So it's work that's unfinished. And you know, SO53 is about controlling flange climate switches, which has bedeviled us in the industry for years. So, okay, keep going. Managing information. Oh, has that changed? And I felt it at the time. I used to teach IT. I mean, it's amazing because I wouldn't be able to teach it now, but I used to. And so, managing information is information technology. That's come a long way, and I'll just put an example in the bottom. So, out there, you'll see out there, Richard's out there with the standardised tasks and the how-to apps, which is a computer-based system, the application. He'll tell you all about the detail of it. What I liked about it is if you just stick network rail standardised tasks in YouTube, you get straight to it. If you just write standardised tasks in Google, I think when I did it last week, it was the second hit. The network rail system was the second hit on a YouTube search. That's not YouTube, on a Google search. So I thought that was great. I was a bit worried that the one on how to change a half set of switches only had 471 hits. But then that's probably not surprising because we've issued out 13,000 mobile devices to our people, and most of them download the app. From what Richard said, did he say 12,000 people had downloaded the app? I can't remember. I think it was about that. So there's far more people using it than that. But I think you should all go and have a look if you don't see it now. Network Rail were smart enough to realise they needed to make these things available to everybody. And if any of you can see those videos, I think they're fantastic. It's probably the most imaginative thing I've seen to help the front end in 10 years. So, IT speeds up the process, but demands that you get it right all at the first time. I was worried that the thing with IT is you can put information into it, but it's very easy to get bad information out of it. We still wrestle with that, I think. We use Ellipse as our work management system, but I'm not confident we've got the data, that we haven't got the data flows into it so that I can rely on the data that comes out of it all the time. And so, moving on, I think there might be, no more, right. So I'm back to when I joined, I was told to go and find out why things have got better since I've been away. So I just got some graphs on good track geometry. I struggled at first with knowing why it went up to 145%. I thought, is that a Louis Walsh X factor thing? But I don't understand it now. So I'm hoping the people in the room, I can explain it to you. So if you've got it's to do with a 90%. It's to do with the satisfactory and the good levels, isn't it? So if you meet the standard requirement for satisfactory and good track, you would be at, I think the maximum is supposed to be 139%. That's what I was told, but we were just about at it. We were at it somewhere up there. So things got better, and I was trying to think why. I've got a list of things we've done that made track better. Well, we're watching it now.
I was looking at your YouTube.
Fantastic.
I can assure you it works.
It's Radio 2's Country Week, so you can get Dolly Parton on there if you want. Yeah, you're right. Well, can I digress? So if you take your laptop at home and put it on your home network, you can watch YouTube on it then. I've done it. So, yeah. Okay. So I think during CP3, 2004 to 2009, contract years, things got better. The good track quality, good track got better. The amount of good track got better. I think that was largely due. This is me simplifying it. We did a shed load of renewal, a lot more. We did about a third more than we would usually have done and we're doing now. Not quite. Some areas it's 22, 28%. Some areas it's 33. But let's call it a third more. So we did a lot more renewal, which as engineers we like, don't we? It's great. So, core track geometry, the same thing. The fact that it's stabilised out during CP4, the last 5 years and 6 years now, was by design. That was the funding arrangement that was agreed. That's what Network Rail they did what they were asked to do, really. I'm not worried about it. What I'm doing is, what I've tried to do is set up something, it's a national track quality report, because the information you get on track quality is so complex. I said I need a simple report that just tells me by route, nationally and by route, and something I can drill down on if I need to, what's happening with trends in track quality across the network. And at the moment, I'm relaxed about it. Track quality is getting better in some areas, stable in others. There's nowhere where it's actually dropping off. So I think we're in a good world. The incremental gains is interesting to me because I like cycling, and some of you will know that the Sky team had a big push during 2008 to 2012 for the Olympics on what they call marginal gains. That's the world I think we're in. As engineers, we've got to manage the railway, keep the track quality where we want it to be, and we've got to do it for less money because we've spent a lot of money in the last 10 years. We've got to do it with more reliably and with less access. So, carry on. Volts per 100 kilometres, same sort of story, but I feel that one thing Network Rail did while I was away is they introduced a whole new approach to measurement and the management of rail defects. So it's based on prevent and predict, which is what the NMT, I think it started actually in 2002, and the new measurement train was probably the first visible part of it. But it was a lot more than that. The introduction of dip angle limits, measuring dip angles. Brian tells me that dip angles, there'd always been a channel on the trains that could measure dip angles at joints and other places, but we didn't actually turn it on. And in 2006 we set actionable limits on those measurements, and I think that's been a really good improvement in network rail, something which I never had when I was a track engineer in Swansea. So broken rails. I guess I joined in 1978, so it's I joined there, I guess, because that's 78, 79, and these are not quite 23. So when I joined, there were 1,000 broken rails in a year in 1978, and in all my time as a track engineer and as the assistant area civil engineer permanent way at Watford, if anybody had said to me we could get down to around 100 broken rails a year across the whole of the country, I would have just wouldn't have believed it. We wouldn't have thought how you could even get there, but we have. I don't know if some of you travel around the world better more than I do, but I don't know if any rail in the world has done a job that's been as successful as that. It's at the point now where TMEs don't see a broken rail for months. You know, some of them not for a year. I think London Midland, the Midland Main Line, have had two, arguably one, broken rail all year. Well, that would have been unthinkable when I was a track engineer, so it's a tremendous result. And this is Brian's take on what we did. So certainly we did a lot of re-railing after Hatfield, Sperry, and I feel I should name companies, because this isn't a network rail thing. This is why the PDI is so great, because we are the track community in the country. We are responsible for we're the stewards of track. And I feel that an obligation that we have to help each other work together. So Sperry equipment made big improvements. We talked about the standard with action to change the action limits. Routes are voluntarily introducing lower action limit intervention levels, that's the sort of world I want to be in, where we decide to intervene before the actionable level in order to not always be chasing our tail. So, okay. This conference is about S&C, and I'm conscious I haven't spoken about S&C particularly. There's a reason for that, because one of the things we decided early on in the BCR, Business Critical Rules workshops, is that S&C is plain line plus. And I thought about that for a while. I thought, so we're saying everything that you get in plain line you can get in S&C plus something else. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's right. But we shouldn't forget that when you analyse risk, and so this system for analysing risk isn't ours, it's the industry accepted model. So when you analyse fatalities and weighted injuries per year, you can see that by far the biggest source of a problem of risk for us is S&C. We had the same when I was at Tube Lines in London Underground, and it's a very similar graph. It came out almost the same. Steve will understand why, Steve Barber. So buckled rails aren't quite the same issue in London Underground. Still a relevant issue, but not quite in the same position. So S&C failure in London Underground, when I was at Tube Lines, we called it S&C component failure. But here it's not quite the same. A significant issue for us, but I wanted to make the point that it doesn't mean that all these things don't matter. They all matter. And we're struggling down here with the cycle at the top at the moment. I'll say something about it in a couple of minutes. How are we doing on time?
18 minutes.
Pardon?
18 minutes.
To go?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't read it. I'm just getting old. Okay. When I came, I wrote down some key themes. I haven't got much further than that actually, but I've written down some key themes and I validated those. So I came, I've already said to you, I own the rules. And I think I'm telling all my people, it's very important that the rules are accurate and that we speak with authority. So it's not about them being simple, not necessarily. The rules have to be what the rules have to be, but people have got to read them and think, yeah, I get that, I understand it. So, and I think generally we're doing all right on that. We've had a bit of a problem with the standards moratorium while we change over the system, but we're coming out the back of that now, and I feel that we're doing that pretty well. I do get some kickback from the front line occasionally, that some of these things, like SO53, they're not simple. They're not simple. They have to be briefed, and people have to be coached in how to apply them and feel confident. So moving people out of harm's way, I don't see any way forward except continuing the road we've started on. And I know lots of engineers say we should be getting more access to the track. I'm not in that camp. I think we've got to be getting people off the track. We don't want to be on the track. It's not a safe place to be. When we go on the track, we need to be doing it in a safe arrangement to actually do work, which I've already said. So remote condition monitoring, fault detection, risk-based maintenance, all those things. Whole life costing, I think, is only just starting to help us as engineers. They're still struggling with it. People are still taking decisions based on cutting the cost and removing the risk. Nobody wants to overrun on a renewals job. But actually, I'm starting to hear the whole life cost argument being used to our advantage when people are specifying new work and new jobs, and especially in enhancement projects. So it's going the right way. The key thing I want to say in provide technical leadership is that I feel that we have slipped a bit on technical competence, and I've said there, do my bit, which I will do. Certainly I will do, and we're just about to relaunch the track maintenance engineers course. Looks like the first one will be in April. We've got a program, we've got a list of about 90 people we need to put on it over the next, I think it'll take 2 years. So a lot of work being done on that, but that's just the start. You know, TMEs, sure, we need to give our TMEs some support. When I was in Serco, they had a very strong culture of supporting the front line. Because each business ran as an independent P&L, profit and loss business, each contract, people in what was called the support office, it was quite clear to you if you were in a support office, you were only there to help the people at the front line. That's the way it worked. Most of the people in the support office were always looking to try and get on a job in the front line. So that was a safer, better place to be. So I feel that our job at the centre, my job, is to support people in the front line. It doesn't mean of course, I'm responsible for the overall framework, so sometimes I have to take a decision and a judgment, but I can do both. So, seeking support from the track community. So that's all of you, isn't it? I'm not a technical expert. I've been around doing technical things for a long time, so you know, I know some things. I've walked out alongside tampers hundreds of times in the wind and the rain and done all that stuff, and done track relaying. Maybe not as much as Roy, but I've done my fair share. So, but all the things that are being taken forward in this industry are not being done just by Network Rail. They're being done by all the companies who are here today. And the PWI, to me, is at the absolute centre of that. It's the only place I can go to where we get so many people from such a diverse range of companies together. Just a couple more. I feel there's three themes that there's three initiatives I've got going on at the moment. So firstly, I'm pushing hard in the centre to finish what we've started. We've got lots of things on the go, but the number of them that are actually getting out there and becoming business as usual and embedded and everybody understands them is a bit small for my liking. So SO53, we're still after all these years pushing that out, and I don't think it's embedded as solidly as it needs to be. Tubular stretcher bar rollout, it's going really well. There's some problems with delivery of bars, and there's been a problem with the kicking strap, as I'll tell you out there. So there've been some issues of supply, but actually it's going pretty well. It's going pretty well, and we'll have our 4,000, just under 3,800 and something, is it, high-risk point ends done by July 2017. I feel it's a really magical initiative. So NR60, we've introduced a new design. We know we've got some problems in the trailing direction. People at Thameslink tell me, people at Reading tell me. I've got a bit of an ear bending from the Thameslink engineer about it, about the fact that they're having to change switches so regularly. But Brian Whitney came to my rescue again. He said, well actually, because what Thameslink said is we haven't got a repair method for HP premium. Why can't I know what HP stands for?
I think it's supposed to be high performance.
High performance, you're right. So Tata's high performance rail. So we haven't got a repair method for it. We like it because it's hard all the way through, whereas when I was an engineer, the hard rails we used were just heat treated hard on the outside. This isn't. It's a good system. Can't repair it. That's what I was getting some grief about. But Brian said to me, in actual fact, the vast majority of switches that are changed because of wear. HP rail wears at about 5 times. It's 5 times less subject. It takes 5 times as long to get to the wear limits as ordinary steel. So he said it's still a much better arrangement. And I believe him. But we need to finish off it. We need to finish it off. We need to understand why the design doesn't work in the trailing direction as well as we'd like. We need to understand the geometry, and we've got people working on that. So finish what we've started. There's other things. Build momentum for the digital railway. Rails created a directorate called Digital Railways, Digital Railway. Fantastic, because it's bringing together all these little things we've done. It's got a big vision about the signalling system that we should have on the railway in 20, 30, 40 years' time. But it's not just about that. It's about bringing together all the things that are going on. And we've talked about some of them. Eddy current I like very much, because we're finding with rolling contact fatigue that we haven't got the full picture of where rolling contact fatigue is. It's hard to keep the records up to date because it relies so much on a human measurement, a human inspection at the moment. So eddy current, I think, is the next big thing for us. Technical solutions there. Thanks to some people in our office and Sperry people, it's gone really well. So plain line pattern recognition. I was surprised when I heard the other day that the plain line pattern recognition software takes a high quality digital image every 0.8 of a millimetre. And you can't imagine the volume of data that it generates has to be managed. So that would have. My brother-in-law did work into robotics for 15 years, and the thing that always limited him, he worked in a European research department, they were always limited by how much data they could handle and how much data they could manage, how quickly they could manage the data. It feels to me like we're in a world there that we probably couldn't even have thought about 10 years ago. So, track geometry reporting. At the moment, this is a top priority for me. At the moment, we have a system where track geometry reporting of immediate action defects and actionable defects, it still goes down to a paper system eventually. Eventually, when it gets to TME, there's a bit of paper that still says these are the level 2 defects, level 3 defects that you need to deal with, and I'm concerned about that. So we need a system where when the train finds the defects, they go straight into some system like RDMS, Rail Defect Management System, and that generates a works order in ellipse. We have to have a system where nobody can drop a ball. It has to be entirely visible. It'll help TMEs to have that. At the moment, we're not there, and I think it's a significant gap in our system at the moment. And then, so 2 things: finish what we've started, build momentum for the future for the digital railway, and don't forget what we've learned. Don't forget what we've learned. I'm a bit dismayed that in the last 2 years, we derailed 10 freight trains. And we should get into a world where we don't derail trains. To me, that's the next big thing. How are we going to get to a world? How will we change our heads to say we will not derail trains? As you know, I've derailed more trains than most engineers would today, more than any, I think. I'm not proud of it, really. And it wasn't always my fault, honestly. But it's always uncomfortable when you have a train derail on your patch. Everyone who's been a TME knows that, don't they? Everyone. It's not a nice position to be in. The first thing you have to do is worry about getting it all back together, when actually you feel like going away and go and have a beer and sit down and think, oh, it's horrible to be the person who has to put it back when the person who was responsible for keeping it on in the first place. So don't forget what we've learned. Geometry is our biggest problem, I think. We find about 3,000 new level 2 twist faults every 4 weeks. We find about 2,000 repeats every 4 weeks. So we're finding about 5,000 level 2 defects every 4 weeks. And it just feels like we never get any better. We don't get worse, but I've tried for 6 months, we've been focusing on trying to get it down, and we're seeing some improvement in the defects for top, with the level 2 twist faults just stuck at the same level. I want to change that. So, geometry, all sorts of things around geometry, achieving a permanent repair, how we're going to teach our people the best way to mend cyclic top permanently. Because you'll know cyclic top's not easy to solve just by walking out and having a look at it. It's more complex than that. Scott Saxelby knows how to do it, but I can't send Scott Saxelby out to every cyclic top and every site and every track maintenance engineer in the country. So some of you will know how to do it as well, of course. And then focus training on track maintenance engineers first, and then we're going to go to other places. Not just section managers, but there's off-track. I think we're not training off-track people as well as we need to, as well as I thought we used to do in the old days. The old days? Isn't that terrible to say the old days? So, and then, I put a picture of eddy current testing because it's a new big idea, something that we've never used in the industry, and it's really going to be, it measures the length and the depth of rolling contact fatigue cracks, and it enables us to move to that place of predict and prevent where we've never really got to. We've struggled as an industry to get there. So I think that's all. Have I taken all my time?
You've got 5 minutes yet.
No, I started out 10 minutes early, Roy.
You did?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.